Welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 671. Today is September 4th, 2024. I'm the host of the show, Kyle Anzalone. We don't have a ton of news to talk about on today's show, but some very important stories to break down. So, if you want to share this show, of course, it's hosted at the Libertarian Institute. We post the show on the blog at antiwar.com, YouTube, Rumble, or Odysee for the video version of the show, and of course, it's up everywhere you can listen to audio podcasts. The sponsor of the show is the Expat Money Summit 2024, which is put on by Mikhail Thorup, the host of the Expat Money Show, and a highly sought after expat consultant. So there's going to be some great speakers at this event, including Scott Horton, Tom Woods, and Dr. Ron Paul. You could get a complimentary ticket by going to expatmoneysummit.com or by clicking through from the affiliate link in the show notes page. I know some of you have already done that and signed up for your free ticket, so I really appreciate it because the more you guys use my code and click on my links, it does help out this show, but also I know this is going to be a very informative conference, and so it will definitely be worth checking out. I will actually be on one of the panels for the conference with Dave DeCamp and Hervoya Morik, speaking about World War III. Is it just fear-mongering or a genuine concern? And that will be on a VIP panel, so you will need a VIP ticket to attend. And if you want one of those tickets, you could get it by use the promo code Kyle, Kyle, when you check out, and that will save you $100 off. All right, everybody, let's get into the show. First story up here today. At least 51 killed in Russian missile strike on Ukrainian military school. So, 2 Russian ballistic missiles hit a Ukrainian military institute in the central Ukrainian city of Povolta, killing at least 51 and wounding 235, Reuters reported on Tuesday. The attack is being reported as the single deadliest strike in Ukraine of the year. Russia has stepped up its missile and drone attacks across Ukraine in response to the Ukrainian invasion of Kursk, which is being carried out with U.S. weapons and Western intelligence. Ukrainian officials told the Associated Press that the strike on the military institute also hit a nearby hospital. So far, Russia has not commented on the attack, but it has been reported by the Russian media. The chairman of a pro-Russia movement in the Russian-controlled Zaporizhia said Russian forces delivered the missile strike. According to TASS, it was this manpower of the military school that was hit by a missile strike. It happened at the moment when they all gathered for their daily routine, when they initially were around 600 servicemen. The enemy losses amount to hundreds of people. TASS also reported that a far-right Ukrainian lawmaker said the casualty rate is higher than what had been reported. He wrote on Telegram, many people were injured, up to 500, and dozens died. The city hospitals are overcrowded. And so this is not unexpected. Now, this is awful to see, people slaughtered en masse like this. This is one of the reasons why I'm anti-war. But I also want to say that this is a fairly predictable consequence of the invasion of Kursk. The more Ukraine has attacked Russian, infrastructure, the more Russia has stepped up its attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. And this, seems to me to be a pretty significant attack with a lot of people being killed. And I think it probably is also meant to send a message to Ukraine's Western backers who have been considering sending trainers to Ukraine, basically saying that Russia is willing to reach out and hit these targets. All right, next up here, this is a story that I wrote for the Libertarian Institute on September 3rd. Report, Yemen's Houthis attacked 2 ships in the Red Sea. So, 2 oil tankers, including one Saudi-flagged ship, were hit by missiles fired from Yemen in the Red Sea. The ruling Houthis took credit for hitting only the Panamanian vessel. So on Monday, sources speaking with France 24 reported that 2 tankers traveling near each other, the Saudi-flagged Ahmad and the Panama-flagged Blue Lagoon 1 were damaged by Houthi missiles off the coast of Yemen. The Houthis, also known as Ansar Allah, took credit for damaging the Blue Lagoon 1, but not the Saudi-flagged ship. A source speaking with Reuters said the Saudi-flagged ship was likely not the target of the attack. The Pentagon said the attack constituted reckless acts of terrorism by the Houthis, and the owners of the ships did not comment initially. More on that in a second. The Houthis have been targeting international shipping in the Red Sea in response to Israel's genocidal onslaught in Gaza. Sana'a initially said it would target Israeli-linked shipping, but has expanded the scope of its attacks following the U.S. and U.K. beginning a bombing campaign against Yemen in January. And now it seems rather than having a list of countries that the Houthis are actively targeting in the Red Sea, rather what they are doing are certain countries are gaining an exception to travel through. I think Russia and China have both set up deals with Ansar Allah on this. You assume Iran does as well. Countries as part of the Axis of Resistance, Syria, Iraq, and there's probably other countries, but countries that are aligned with the West or Western-linked shipping seem to be hit fairly, I don't want to say indiscriminately, but it's not as though all these ships had to be tied to Israel, to the U.S., to the U.K. for the Houthis to attack them. Houthis have captured or disabled several ships, including a Greek-flagged vessel that the Houthis allowed to be towed to Djibouti last week. Washington and London began bombing Yemen several months ago, and the operations have had little impact on the Houthis' ability to impact international shipping. Now, we did have an update to this story after I finished writing it, and that is the Saudi shipping firm that owns the Saudi-flagged ship denied that it had been struck by a Houthi missile. So in a statement, the Saudi National Shipping Company said, "We unequivocally confirm that the ship was not targeted and suffered no injuries or damage. The ship remains fully operational and is headed to its planned destination without interruption." And so this is an interesting statement because it's essentially the Saudi government putting out a statement that contradicts the U.S. because the U.S. claimed that this Saudi ship was hit as well. I would assume the U.S. would want the Saudi ship to have been hit as well because Saudi Arabia was at a war with Yemen, the Houthis, for 8 years from 2015 until 2022, and that only recently subsided. However, as that war subsided, the U.S. then started bombing Yemen, and the Saudis have been resistant to joining that. However, the U.S. is also taking steps that prevent the Saudi-Houthi peace deal from actually fully being implemented and a full end to that war being achieved. And so you do wonder if maybe Washington would like a little more help here from Riyadh and is hoping that the Saudis will allow themselves to be dragged back into the war in Yemen. All right. Really bad news here dealing with the West Bank. This one from Dave DeCamp, antiwar.com. Jenin is just the beginning. Israel planning more escalations in the West Bank. So, this is a report from Israeli media. Israel is planning more significant escalations in the West Bank, and the Israeli media considers the occupied territory the second most critical front immediately after Gaza. Israeli security officials told the outlet that while the directive for the West Bank is in its initial stages and that changes on the ground will take time, a new series of operations across the territory are imminent. Last week, Israel launched its largest attack on the West Bank since 2002, with raids focused on Jenin and Tulkram in the north. The Jenin operation is just the beginning, a security official told the Israeli outlet. The Israeli assault on Jenin continued into the seventh day on Tuesday as the city remains under siege. According to the municipality, the Israeli military has destroyed 70% of the roads and infrastructure in the city, and about 80% of the water has been cut off to residents. And so if you're bulldozing the roads and you're cutting off the water, then it does seem like you're in the beginning stages of a population displacement campaign. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, at least 30 Palestinians have been killed and 130 others were injured in the West Bank since Israel launched its assault on the Strip on the West Bank last week. The total deaths include 6 children and 2 elderly people. Since October 7th, 680 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli settlers and soldiers in the West Bank. So the report said that the Israeli military aims to have a calmer West Bank by October, but the escalations will likely lead to more armed resistance from Palestinians. As Israel began the assaults last week, the foreign minister Israel Katz said the West Bank should be dealt with the same way as Gaza and called for the evacuation of Palestinians. Some Palestinians have been forced out of their homes in the territory, similar to the forced displacements in Gaza. Many members of Benjamin Netanyahu's governing coalition have been outspoken about their desire to annex the West Bank and take over more land. When the coalition was formed in 2022, it agrees to prioritize the expansion of West Bank settlements with the ultimate goal of annexing the territory. And this has the backing of a former Trump official. So Trump's former envoy to Israel, U.S. should fund Israeli annexation of the West Bank. So former U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, called for the U.S. to fund the Israeli annexation of the West Bank in a book that was released on Tuesday, which is titled One Jewish State, The Last Best Hope to Resolve the Israel-Palestinian Conflict. Friedman, who was the ambassador from 2017 to 2021, wrote in the book that Israel needs financial assistance to assert and maintain its sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, using the biblical name for the Israeli-occupied West Bank. He suggested that the next Republican administration, work with Congress to redirect $1 billion meant to provide aid to Palestinians, the easiest bucket to tap and into reposition is that of the United States, he wrote. Friedman said the U.S. should support the Israeli annexation of the West Bank based first and foremost on the biblical prophecies and values. He told Forward that he hopes to share his annexation plans with former President Trump at an appropriate time. While he was in office, Trump unveiled a so-called peace plan that would have seen Israel annex Jewish settlements in the West Bank and the Jordan Valley, a long, narrow valley along the West Bank's border with Jordan. The proposal was dead on arrival since it was a non-starter for the Palestinians. Miriam Adelson, the wife of the late billionaire Sheldon Adelson, has reportedly pledged $100 billion to spend on Trump's 2024 campaign, and she is expected to press him to support the Israeli annexation of the West Bank. Friedman's book was released 1 week after Israel launched its largest attack on the West Bank since 2002. Israeli officials say the operations will escalate and that the territory is being treated as the second most critical front immediately after Gaza. We've been talking about this on the show for some time, by the way, that there was a real concern that Israel would try to annex the West Bank. And it does seem that that is now in its initial phases. And I'm not sure what this means for the Middle East, what other countries would get involved to prevent this, what the U.S. would do. But this seems just absolutely horrific. Next up, let's talk about this, because what we could do is stop all of this immediately in Washington. And the Israelis know it, Washington knows it, and it's just that Washington, the White House, refuses to act on it. So this one from Dave DeCamp, September 3rd, antiwar.com. Israeli official, without U.S. aid, Israel couldn't sustain Gaza operations for more than a few months. So a senior Israeli official told Haaretz that without U.S. military aid, Israel would not have been able to sustain military operations in Gaza for more than a few months, demonstrating how crucial U.S. support is for the genocidal slaughter of the Palestinians. The support is especially crucial for the Israeli Air Force. The report said that the U.S. provides the Israeli Air Force with all of its fighter planes and some of its bombs, missiles, and intelligence equipment. The U.S. has also helps Israel develop joint weapon systems for all three layers of air defense. Since October 7th, the U.S. has shipped Israel over 50,000 tons of weapons and other military equipment. Weapon shipments have increased over the past month, with flight tracking data showing that August was the busiest month for U.S. deliveries since October of 2023. President Biden has also signed a bill into law that included $17 billion in additional military aid for Israel, on top of the $3.8 billion in military aid it receives every year from the U.S. The administration recently approved $20 billion in new arms deals for Israel, which includes a new fleet of F-15 fighter jets. The official speaking with Haaretz said the Israeli Air Force is crafting a recommendation to increase the domestic production of bombs, missiles, and other ammunition to reduce reliance on the U.S., but any changes would take years to implement, meaning Israel will be continue to almost entirely rely on the U.S. for support. Israel's reliance on the U.S. gives the Biden administration enormous leverage over the Israeli government. The administration has refused to use that power to force a ceasefire, despite claims that U.S. officials are working for one. So, just more evidence that that's a lie. And the slaughter continues in Gaza. Just a quick update here. Gaza Health Ministry said on Tuesday that 33 Palestinians were killed by Israel in the past 24 hours, bringing the total death toll to 40,819. One of the Israeli strikes hit a college building that was sheltering displaced civilians in Gaza City, killing 7. So, Turkish outlet reported the targeted area was crowded with residents and displaced people. Gaza's civil defense said 9 Palestinians were killed by an Israeli bombing on a residential building near a municipal park in Gaza City. At least 2 children and 1 woman were among the dead. The civil defense also reported that Israeli artillery and drone attacks in southern Gaza. The true death toll in Gaza is unclear since the health ministry numbers don't include the people who are trapped under the rubble and presumed dead and those who are killed by indirect causes of the war. The number could be far higher. We're talking, I think, probably 100,000 plus at this point. All right, wrapping up the show for today. 2 Marines assaulted by Turkish... Oh, not that story. Sorry. It's this story. U.S. says it captured ISIS facilitator in Syria with Kurdish forces. So U.S. Central Command said Monday that its forces, along with the Kurdish-led SDF, captured an ISIS facilitator in Syria who was responsible for backing other ISIS members out of prison. So during the early morning hours of September 1st, CENTCOM forces and the SDF captured Khalid Ahmed al-Danal, an ISIS facilitator assessed to be aiding efforts of detained ISIS fighters to include recently escaped fighters. The CENTCOM press release said. The command said that 5 ISIS members broke out of prison last week. The SDF captured 2 of them and is on the search for the other 3. So General Eric Kurilla, the head of CENTCOM, said over 9,000 ISIS detainees in over 20 SDF remain in 20 SDF detention facilities in Syria. A literal and figurative ISIS army in detention. If a large number of these ISIS fighters escaped, it would pose an extreme danger to the region and beyond. On Monday, the SDF released 50 people accusing them of being released 50 people accused of being ISIS members as a part of an amnesty deal. The SDF also holds tens of thousands of women and children in the U.S.-funded detention facilities that were set up after the defeat of ISIS in eastern Syria. In May, Amnesty International released a report that accused the SDF of being responsible for torture and mass death due to inhumane conditions at the prison. The report said the U.S. is involved in most aspects of the detention system and that the Pentagon provided hundreds of millions of dollars to the SDF and affiliate security forces. The U.S. uses ISIS as a justification to stay in Syria, but the occupation is more about keeping the areas out of control of the hands of the Syrian government and its allies, which include Iran and Russia. The U.S. is also maintaining crippling economic sanctions on Syria, which are designed to prevent the country's reconstruction and have a devastating impact on civilians. All right, guys, I said it'd be a little bit of a short show today, so we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And just a reminder, again, me and my wife are expecting our first daughter. We are now a couple days past the due date, so really any time now. Gonna take a couple weeks off from the show once she's born. So if you don't see a new episode, Conflicts of Interest, in your feed for a couple of weeks, no reason to panic. We will return. If you want updates, you can follow me on Twitter at @KyleAnzalone_. Thanks, everyone.